Thank you. Thank you for the kisses. That's so nice of you. Hello friends, it's Grace, and today I'm going to be sharing my top 12 favorite writing books. So as you may or may not know, I'm a writer. I haven't gotten anything published yet, but I am working on revising my 6th book, and that's going to be the first one that I try to pursue publication for, hopefully starting in early 2020. Look how excited Belly is about that. I tried to make it a top 10, but I honestly couldn't narrow it down. So you get 12 recommendations, which, I mean, that's better than 10 because it's more. So I've kind of separated them into 2 categories, one that's kind of general advice, one that's for plotting, and then for revisions. Unfortunately, I have an awful memory, and some of these I haven't read recently, and so I won't be able to tell you very specifics on why I love them. I just remember loving them and them being really helpful, and I gave them 5 stars on Goodreads. So hopefully I can make some sort of sense out of why I like these writing books so much. So the first one I'm going to recommend to you is You've Got a Book in You by Elizabeth Sims. I love her so much. She works a lot with Writer's Digest, so I get their magazines monthly. And monthly? Is it monthly or is it not monthly? I think it's like quarterly. She just opened up her editing services again, and I really want to hire her, but I'm so poor. So, if anyone wants to give me $1,000 to have her help me with my book, that would be amazing. Nobody has $1,000. $1,000 is more money than exists. This was a really helpful book. This was one of the first ones that I was like, wow, this is freaking incredible. The tagline thingy subtitle here says, a stress-free guide to writing the book of your dreams. It has a lot of general advice for writing, so this is a good one if you're starting off. It's a good one for any step in the process. It's not specifically about outlining, it's not specifically about revision, it's not specifically about anything in particular. It's just like overall like encouraging you to write your book and giving you good advice on it. There's one chapter on like planning your book. There's a chapter on like getting through the first draft. There's a chapter completely dedicated to getting the names right, like naming your characters appropriately. There's one that's how to write a great chapter. It even talks about publishing near the end. So it basically just goes over kind of everything. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was super helpful. I love Elizabeth Sims, and I want her to edit my book, but I'm too poor, as I've already said. This was awesome, and I would highly recommend it. I don't dog-ear fiction books, but I dog-ear writing books. I dog-eared here where she talks about like formatting your manuscript, which is really helpful. So like she has like a visual example here, but she goes through formatting it for when you submit it. I have dog ears on other places that I thought were like especially important because I highlight, but then there's some places that I'm like, I need to make sure that I remembered. And then I dog-eared the whole publishing, what it is and how it works. So this whole chapter I'm like, I need this. She just does a whole overview of basically everything you need to know about being a writer and that kind of stuff, and it's really helpful, and I would highly recommend this book. The next one I'm going to be recommending is Writing Great Books for Young Adults by Regina Brooks. This one was really helpful specifically because I write young adult. There aren't a ton of books that are specifically for YA, and so this was really helpful. It goes through characters, building your plot, point of view, theme, getting feedback, finding an agent. So again, it's sort of like it has an overview of everything, but this one is specific to young adult books. So if you want to write young adult books, this is definitely one I would super recommend. There are exercises in here, so I recommend this. Read it. Next, we've got Writing with Emotion, Tension, and Conflict by Cheryl St. John. I already said I have an awful memory, so I don't remember exactly everything. I should reread this. But I gave it 5 stars, and I remember it being like, whoa! One of my problems is conflict. And so I was like, this is perfect! My problem with conflict is not that I'm not willing to put my characters through hard stuff, it's that I'm not creative enough to figure out what hard stuff they need to go through. So this is really helpful in that sense. It has different sections on conflict, on emotion, one even on setting. There's tension. It goes through dialogue, drawing emotions from characters. So I just felt like this was a really helpful book. There's a character sheet that I dog-eared here that is basically for each character you write down certain things that will help you with emotion, tension, and conflict. So like the motivation, the long-term goal, the short-term goal, the character flaw, and a plan to use it against them, which that's really helpful for me. We've got internal conflict, external conflict, the black moment, theme, all that kind of stuff that's really, really helpful. So if you have any trouble with conflict or emotion or tension, emotion, tension, or conflict, then this is the book for you. It's got really good advice in it. Techniques for crafting an expressive and compelling novel, and that's what we all want, isn't it? The final recommendation I have in the sort of general category is The Writer's Guide to Beginnings. This is a little less general because it's specific to beginnings, and I read this recently and still don't remember a ton because that's how bad my memory is. On Goodreads, I wrote, "This was seriously amazing and so helpful for my work in progress." Unfortunately, for writing books, I haven't been giving many like reviews. Like a lot of my old reviews just have a rating and not a review, and I'm like, you have to write down why you liked it or else I'm not going to remember. So anyway, I read this recently. The entire book focuses on making a really strong beginning, and that's super important because if you want to sell your book, the first thing they read is the beginning. So basically it goes through the anatomy of a first page, the first scene, your idea, where to begin, how to actually make your beginning good, the end of the beginning, so like basically how to make the end of your beginning compelling enough for them to read on and that kind of stuff. And it was really, really helpful. So this is really good for really any stage in your writing because you can use this when you're plotting or when you're writing or in revisions. Next are my revisions for the plotting process, or if you're a pantser, just any like sort of beforehand when you're thinking about it. We've got Break Into Fiction by Mary Buckham and Diana Love. So I have read this twice. I read it once originally and really, really enjoyed it. Gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. It basically takes you through each plot point that they think you should have. It says 11 steps to building a story that sells. So it has specifically 11 steps. It really helps you figure out what your plot is going to look like. And I actually think this would be okay for pantsers because it doesn't plot everything, even though the whole thing of this is power plotting. It just plots like the most important points. And so if you're a pantser and you just want the strong pillars, then you can like pants your way between them. That would work. So I read this once, really enjoyed it, and then I read it a second time when I actually took a class by Mary Buckham on this, and that was really, really helpful, and I loved it. It was a small enough class that she got to talk to each of us about our works in progress, and she gave us worksheets that we worked on, and she was able to critique them and help us figure out exactly what to do. One thing that I love about this is with each chapter, it goes through the plot point that they want you to learn about, and then it takes you through, it has a template. So the template is you answer all these questions, and then it has an example from a movie that fills out the template. This specific chapter has templates for 4 different movies for this one plot point to explain it. And so you have a lot of examples, and it's really, really well done, and I would definitely recommend this if you want 11 steps to building a story that sells. Next, I've got Save the Cat Writes a Novel. Currently, this is like my favorite one. Like this is probably my top one, but I also just read it, and so like it's very fresh in my mind. I talked about this in a previous video recently, but there's a Save the Cat that is for scriptwriters, and this young adult author, Jessica Brody, who you may know, she wrote The Chaos of Standing Still, which I have on my TBR, and I can't wait to read because it looks so good. She took that book and wrote a version that's specifically for novelists. It says the last book on novel writing you'll ever need, and it's really true. The first thing it shows you is the Save the Cat beat sheet. So all the beats you want to include in your book. It's not formulaic, it's just the things that we as human beings respond to naturally in a story. It's all the story elements that work and have worked and are timeless. It's not formulaic, so don't worry about that. But then it goes through the 10 different genres, it's not really genres, but like 10 different story types and how they work with the beat sheet. And so that's super cool. I loved everything about this. This was phenomenal. Look how much I highlighted. Can you see how much I highlighted? Because I highlighted so much because it's amazing. You have to read this if you're going to be a writer. I can't believe it took me so long to read this because this can change everything. This is going to be how I plot my books from now on, and it's helping me with revisions for my current book. Like, this is amazing. I could talk about this for hours. It's so good. Next, we've got Plot Perfect by Paula Munier. I'm so bad at pronouncing names. Have you guys noticed this? This one, basically, I would, before every single book, work on these 2 together for myself. So I would probably start out working with Plot Perfect and then use what I learned from that to go into Save the Cat. What I mean by that is they're similar in the sense that they both teach you how to plot your books. But for me, I have felt like going through this and going through the plotting process in this gives me a good foundation to then go through this to make it even stronger and like finalize my outline. So that's my process. So this is building unforgettable stories scene by scene. We talk about plot, theme, subplots, specific scenes, and like how to write specific scenes. The 3-act structure, which I know some pantsers, this may not be a video for pantsers. I hope that it'll help you anyway, but like I'm a plotter, and so a lot of my recommendations are going to be for plotters basically, because I'm a plotter and these are the ones that I loved. But it goes into pacing. At the end it has your plot perfect checklist, which is awesome. It's just the perfect guide for how to plot your book. Like this is the first thing that I turn to when I'm plotting a new book. I go through these, I look at my highlights, and I go through the exercises and make my vague plot based on this, and then I take it through Save the Cat. Those are like my 2 main core books that I have to use every single time I plot a book. Next we've got Writing Blockbuster Plots, a step-by-step guide to mastering plot, structure, and scene by Martha Alderson. This one was really helpful. I think I read this fairly recently. Again, it's about plotting because I'm a plotter. So it has a plot planner and helps you plot the beginning, the middle, the end, but it also talks about like cause and effect and tension and conflict, thematic significance. The main 2 parts are plot planner and scene tracker. And so it has the like big overall plot stuff and then the smaller scene tracker stuff. The final section of the book is taking what it has taught you and taking it through very famous books so that you can see how it actually works in the real world. And see good examples. So I think this one was awesome. I absolutely enjoyed it and thought it was super, super helpful. The final one in the plotting section is The Secrets of Story, Innovative Tools for Perfecting Your Fiction and Captivating Readers by Matt Bird. This is a fairly recent read. I think I might have read it like over the summer maybe. I might be making that up. I honestly have no idea. I have no sense of time. Time is an illusion. This one was one of the few that like when I read it, I was like, my life has changed. Maybe this doesn't go in plotting. Maybe this would be better in the general section. I don't remember. But basically, it just changed my view on everything so much because he had the best advice. Basically, it goes through a story checklist. I dog-eared so many things. On my dog-eared things, I wrote things. So for this chapter, I wrote whole chapter for plotting, especially these certain pages. So like this chapter in particular to me seemed like really great for plotting that I need to use. Then on this one, whole chapter for plotting scenes, whole chapter for rewriting, and in parentheses I wrote so smart. So I guess I think that this is a really smart way to revise. I should reread this because I'm currently revising. And then it goes through even like revisions. So it's super helpful. It takes you basically from beginning to end. It has some genius advice that seems like kind of simple but is so helpful and I never would have thought of before. And then my final 3 recommendations are more on the revision side. So first off, we've got Story Fix by Larry Brooks, Transform Your Novel from Broken to Brilliant. So this one is another one that changed my life. What are you doing, crazy doggo? You are so cute. So this one changed my life when I read it. It was my first introduction to Larry Brooks and I read his other books, which were also really helpful. He has story physics and story engineering, and those are also really helpful, but this is the one that I first read, I think, and it blew my mind. Larry Brooks is a really harsh dude, and I love that because I really like harsh, blunt advice because that's like what helps me best is being like, you gotta do it this way. Like this, you gotta, or else you suck. That's not really how it is, but that's the vibe. If you can't handle brutal honesty, this is not the book for you because he's very brutally honest and that's what I love. But this was a game changer for me. So it gives you the tools not only to revise your book, but to work it before you even begin writing, which is perfect. So my thought on it is like, if you listen to everything he says in here and match your book to his story criteria before you start writing, your book will be much better off because he's got, it's Story Fix, and so it's meant for like after you've written a draft, but I think that you can use it to plot your book for sure. Like you can use it to plot your book and make it stronger so that when you get into your actual writing, you come out with a stronger draft than you would have otherwise. I wrote on here, use this when plotting and revising, very important. So I should probably look at that. He's got like this table of story elements that are super important, and it's just so amazing. A big thing that Larry Brooks is super passionate about is the concept and the premise. I mean, you can't fix a book that the idea itself is not strong enough. You have to start with the seed. He talks about like starting with the initial seed of the idea, making sure the concept of it is strong enough before you even plot any further. And that's now what I'm going to be doing from now on. What I have taken from this, which is not exactly what he says, but what I'm going to do from now on is before I start outlining a book, I'm going to basically write the jacket copy that like says like the summary of the book before I write it, and make sure that is compelling enough before I start outlining, because I want to make sure that the core of my story is strong enough before I get into it. When I read this was the first time I even thought about this. So this is phenomenal if you're okay with brutal honesty. Next, we've got revision and self-editing for publication. Techniques for transforming your first draft into a novel that sells, by James Scott Bell. I love him. I think he's super helpful at writing about writing. So it goes through self-editing and revision. It talks about like some really specific stuff: characters, plot and structure, point of view, scenes, dialogue, beginning, middle, end, voice and style, theme, all this kind of stuff. At the end, it has an ultimate revision checklist. It's so helpful for revisions. Like if you're in revisions, if you're ever going to be in revisions, read this book. This is a step-by-step process that's really, really helpful. And my final recommendation is Troubleshooting Your Novel: Essential Techniques for Identifying and Solving Manuscript Problems, by Stephen James. This is a very recent one that I read. I read it around the same time as I read Save the Cat, so it was sometime last month, and it was really, really, really good. The different parts are story progression, characterization, narrative techniques, reader engagement, and style and finesse. It's meant to be after you've written your manuscript, going through and fixing problems. But as a plotter, I absolutely think you can do this for plotting. I will use this for plotting and revision stages and take his advice and apply it to my outline, and then apply it to my manuscript after I've already written it. And so this is just so full of awesome advice. It's really simple but effective. I would definitely recommend this for any stage in the process, because this is awesome. So I hope some of those recommendations are helpful. If you haven't read them, please look them up. If you have read them, you should let me know down below what you thought of them. If you have any other writing book recommendations, please comment them down below, because I would love recommendations as well. I'm always looking for new writing books. Those are my top 12. I hope that you read them and that they are helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.